This is Mrs. H, and you have found the Nostalgia Show. We go back in time and see what was life really like. Not from the spin doctors of today. We are going to get right into what people were really thinking about in the time by going into the actual periodicals of that time. Will this be America tomorrow? This is from Movie Guide. Britain has learned to accept sacrifice and hardship beyond those forced upon us. Now, this is an editor's note that Robert St. John is one of the radio's crack reporters. I don't know, do we use that anymore? She's a crack YouTuber. Nix that. The present article is based on his experiences as the NBC correspondent in London, a post he took after thrilling experiences in the Balkans. Incidentally, the article was written before coffee rationing was introduced here, as will be made clear in the last paragraph. So when he said this is written before coffee, I have so many friends that love coffee so much that I always we'll write to each other. If we make a mistake, it'll be like, I wrote before coffee. So when I started reading that, I was already memeing it in my mind. But okay, back to the show. Okay, I'm going to scroll down. I've just come back from a year in wartime Britain, and I find everywhere in America a burning curiosity about what it is like over there now after 3 years of war. So this is actually 1943, the very beginning of it in January that this was written. People are beginning to realize that America may be tomorrow like England is today. I don't as much anymore, but I used to read a lot of novels, and I liked World War II novels, and I tended to like spy or reporter novels. So I almost feel like I am having a memory here, even though I didn't live through this. Have you ever had that with a book? And so here's a 10-minute picture of how those millions of people over in the British Isles live after 3 years of depressing blackout, 3 years of living on the fringes of hell, never knowing what tonight or tomorrow will bring in the way of air raids or artillery shelling, or perhaps even invasion. Oh my goodness. So, we have be able to have retrospective, we're able to look back, but they're in it right now, and the Americans that would have been reading this would have really been paying it close attention. They still go to the movies over there, so that's interesting. Would you have thought that they went to the movies? That is the one big way they try to forget all the miseries of war, the rationing, the shortages, and the casualty list. They see Hollywood pictures almost as soon as you do, thanks to the clippers that fly the Atlantic. Clippers, I guess those are little airplanes. Are you familiar with that word? Can you tell me about clippers? I learned so much from our readers and our viewers. They still drink beer in their pubs after work at night, but it's pretty pale beer now. So pale beer, I guess that means it's a little watered down. When a prohibition leader complained on the floor of Parliament recently about the greatly increased consumption of beer in Britain, the Minister of Food laughed away his objections by explaining that less beer is being consumed than ever before because beer has been watered down so much by the government order that most of what the pubs now serve is colored aqua pura. I'm not sure aqua pura, but I guess they're just getting this really watered down beer. Have you ever seen the shows over, I think it's on the BBC did it, PBS had a version where they live those time, 1400s house or 1900s house, and you can get different ones and you can get an idea of what it was like with the rationing. And I remember the mom, she had lost weight and she was trying to give her kids the last of the rations, and just learning how to use the rations were so hard. And so I like the idea of living during the 50s, the 40s, but I also glamorize it a lot. So we're getting a better understanding now of what life was really like. It's been 3 years since the British have seen street lights and electric signs and lighted shop windows, but the British have acquired cat's eyes as a result of the blackout. I guess when it's dark, you can see better. Mothers tell their children to eat plenty of carrots so they'll be able to see in the dark. Is that true? And even, I used to have been told that if you eat so many carrots, your nose will turn orange. This is a myth. And even flyers in the RAF when they gather around their mess tables. I have a mess table as well. Talk about which food really does feed the nerves of the eyes. Few women wear stockings in the summer anymore. I used to see that they would take like an eyeliner. Have you ever seen this? Have you ever done this? And go down the back of the leg to make it look like they wore stockings. I personally hate stockings, but if this was part of the time and you couldn't have it, I'm sure the women felt like something was missing. My grandmother worked as a buyer during World War II for stores, and she was talking about what they had to do with the stockings. I wish I could hear more stories. She's now in heaven. So few women wore stockings. In the winter, they darn and mend constantly to make their old socks last. It takes weeks to get the runs in a pair of stockings mended in a shop. I use nail polish if you have a run. Have you ever tried that? I'm talking to the ladies. And have you ever mended socks? Can I ask you guys, have you ever, is it darned? Have you ever mended socks, or would you just buy new ones? Is this something totally of the past? Is this ever done? Tell me about it in the comments. It takes months to get a watch cleaned. And as for watch repairing, that's ended for the duration, unless you know a ferry pilot who'll bring your broken watch over to here to New York and take it back all repaired on his next flight. Okay, so I don't have any fancy watches. My husband has that Fitbit watch, and it tells you way too much. So I don't know. Have you ever gotten your watch cleaned or fixed, or have you ever done it yourself? Is that something that's a skill that is gone that people used to do? Let me know about your watches. If the tubes in your radio burn out, the chances are slim of getting new ones. Matches are almost non-existent in England. Many men have made crude cigarette lighters in their spare time, and the government has taken great pains to see that lighter fluid is plentiful and cheap. I mean, I think during the pandemic, a lot of us learned how to do things like we learned how to cut our own hair. Raise my hand. Did you? But I don't know if I can make a crude cigarette lighter. Let me know if you ever done anything like that. Cigarettes were so scarce that some months ago that a shop wouldn't sell them to you unless you had been a regular customer before the war. And by the way, don't smoke. But then the tax on cigarettes went way up. Now cigarettes cost nearly 3 times what they do in America. And many people no longer can afford to smoke. So the cigarettes have become considerably more easy to obtain. So I guess you can get it, but it's too much to buy. No one gets gasoline in Britain unless he's using his car strictly on war business. The ever-shrinking number of taxicabs in London are all driven by old men, many of them in their 70s. In some English cities, taxis have vanished completely from the streets. So how did everyone get around? Bicycles are the thing in Britain today. It's not just a fad. It's a matter of dire necessity now that bus lines are being cut down some more and rail traffic is being curtailed. I know several wealthy London bankers and brokers who ride 5 or 10 miles to work by bicycle every day of the week and then back again at night. Are any of you bike riders or walkers? I used to work in Atlanta at the Margaret Mitchell House and Museum, and people who would visit, sometimes they would know that in Atlanta there's not as much pedestrian walking as it is in like New York City. I'm from Long Island, and so this is very different. In Britain, I heard even today people will bike more than you will see today. Are you guys bike riders? Let me know in the comments. Thousands of shops have been bombed out of business. Thousands more closed because of their owners have gone into munitions factories or into armed forces, and the rest have many bare shelves. And maybe we can relate to some of that with all the stores closing during the pandemic. Most articles sold today in Britain have been standardized by the government. Utility models, they're called. There's a utility cigarette lighter, for example, designed by the Government Bureau. No other type can be manufactured, and the government fixed the price at which it can be sold. The same with women's dresses. a very limited number of styles and a very limited number of fabrics and only certain colors. In some way, as a woman, I think that would help protect you in the sense of if you couldn't afford anything, you couldn't get anything, and you really were down about it, but every other woman on the street was going through this because of wartime, maybe it would soften it just a little bit. But still, there's a variety enough to keep all the British women from looking alike, okay, when they get dressed. And there's more to come. I might go ahead and do some more on this one. I really find it fascinating, the anthropology, the sociology, the history, and I can see why people were asking him, give me the scoop. I'm so glad you joined me for today's nostalgia show.